Let's run through a big Portland Timbers backline status update. First and foremost, the exciting news: the Timbers have a new left back, Yimmer Fori from Colombian side Independiente Medellin. He is a Colombian youth international, also 22 years old, like the fullback opposite flank of him, Juan Mosquera, who was also signed from the same club. I had some confusion on which club Fori was actually signing from. He was technically a Nacional player on loan at Independiente Medellin, but I talked to a journalist who had some intel on the situation, and here's what they said on it. Fori was on loan at Independiente Medellin from Nacional, the club where Dairon Asprilla currently plays for, but Independiente had a purchase obligation on Fori, the talented, high-potential left back, which they had to trigger that purchase obligation and then sold him to Portland from there. So this is a transfer that is coming from Independiente Medellin. Nonetheless, he has won the league with two different clubs in Colombia, has played over 125 games as a young player, just 22 years old, and he's a winner. You talk about the two league titles. In one of them, he was a day-in, day-out starter, and he also has a Copa Colombia to his name, the equivalent of the U.S. Open Cup here in the States. The Timbers were 20th in MLS last year in terms of goals conceded. That's the number one thing that needs to get better in 2025. This signing goes towards improving that. Now, let's gloss over the depth chart along all positions on the back line. I'd imagine despite 2024 being a down year for Claudio Bravo, the 27-year-old Argentine is still likely the starting left back game one versus Vancouver. I could absolutely be wrong. Fori could come into preseason, knock it out at Coachella Valley, but that also has some aspects out of his control. What does the paperwork look like? When can the Timbers officially register him? When can he play his first preseason game? Does he come to Portland first? Does he go to California? There's still lots of questions about Fori. This move is, of course, not official by the club in any means. It was reported first by Tom Bogert yesterday of Give Me Sport. You rewind to this time last year, Bravo was coming back from injury. He was already behind the 8 ball to start the 2024 season, and I think that hurt him as the campaign went along. Fori has never played in a league outside of Colombia, and for large parts of last season, he was playing as a wingback in a 3-at-the-back formation. The Timbers experimented with it 2 or 3 times early in the 2024 season, playing in a 3-back formation, but if they want to, they theoretically have good personnel to do it. They have enough center backs, and they also have Fori, who could play on the left, and Juan Mosquera, who could play on the right. But Phil Neville, his preferred formation, and we saw it for 95% of last season, is the 4-2-3-1. So Fori would have to get used to that, and of course playing in a new league with new teammates by his side. They did draft Ian Smith out of Denver in the first round of last month's draft, who is listed as a left back, and 18-year-old Sawyer Jura, who made his first team debut last year at FC Dallas, typically plays as a left back also, who has been part of the Timbers setup since he was 12 years old. And even before that, he was part of the Timbers setup in Bend, Oregon as well. So he's a true homegrown product. Jura isn't in the Timbers 2025 preseason roster because of a foot injury he picked up training with Spanish side Osasuna this offseason. He is still under his MLS Next Pro contract for 1 more year, which is notable because it restricts the number of MLS games he can play. He is set to join the first team in 2026. Right back on paper seems like the thinnest of the 3 positions along the back line. Juan Mosquera, fortunately for Phil Neville, was fit enough to play all 34 regular season games last year, but that's going to be asking a lot of him to do yet again. His attacking output is undeniable. Now going into year 4 with the Timbers, really his 3rd full season with the club, it's about consistency defensively, which I think improved as the 2024 season went along. The backup who can be a depth option at anywhere on the back line is Eric Miller, coming back for another season with the club. He was signed early in the 2023 campaign as kind of a squad player, but he's become increasingly important filling in across the back line. He's now 32 years old, but he is still going to be the first choice right back behind Juan Mosquera. Miguel Araujo, I've talked to him about this. His preferred position is playing at center back, but he's played on the right of a back 3 for his nation of Peru when on the international stage. I think a lot of those skills could translate to right back and he's certainly capable of playing that spot if needed. Finally, center back, the spot with the most subjectivity. This is my prediction. More so than any other spot, these are spots up for grabs, in my opinion. The Timbers, unfortunately, had little continuity at center back last year, and could never nail down a consistent pairing. Here was the minutes breakdown in league play for the bunch last year. Bottom of the list you can see is New Zealand international Finn Surman, but hopes are high for the 21-year-old who has played a hell of a one appearance for the Timbers versus Seattle. He was practically man of the match in that game. I'm not sure if he actually got it, but if he impresses like that in preseason as he played on the biggest stage, winning the Cascadia Cup at Lumen Field, he could make his way higher up in the depth chart and maybe even be a regular starter. Let's go over to Dario Zuparic, who was the most consistent player last year out of being in the fold early on. He led the center back room in minutes overall. Kamal Miller, the Timbers invested a lot in him, and he has proved more than any in the bunch. He's the best passer. In terms of accolades, he was an all-star in 2022. He also won Leagues Cup a year later with Inter Miami. And the Timbers have a lot invested in him, and I expect him to be probably the number one center back, at least on the depth chart right now. I talked a bit about Araujo. His season was broken up last year because of international competition, Copa America. That's something that Max Crepeau and Kamal Miller also suffered from. But Araujo, I think, was largely pretty consistent. I think he's good against the press, and he's also pretty aggressive in the tackle. We'll see where he sets up in all of this. Zach McGraw seems to be the odd man out, just in terms of playing minutes last year. He had a pretty solid month of June when Araujo and Kamal Miller were out on international duty, but after that, it was hard to make a dent in the squad and get back into the starting fold. He is still the best Timber center back aerially. We, of course, saw that in Leagues Cup against Leon when he had 2 goals, including the game winner against the Mexican side. This is a unit that needs to be much improved in 2025. It is not just the 4 in the defensive spots. That goes for the midfield and the forwards defending from the front as well. How do you think the backline will perform in 2025? Continuity is going to be a huge advantage for Phil Neville and his team, considering all the coaching staff is coming back. A lot of the core defenders are in place, and they didn't know each other last year per se. Kamal Miller had never played with Dario Zuparic. Dario Zuparic had never played with Finn Surman, and now they actually have a full off-season together, and it's going to be interesting to see who gets the nod on February 23rd versus Vancouver.